fabulous window, isn't it? You know, I mean, so yes, thank you. Hey, Bruce. I wanted to first thank, first of all, a lot of the people that Terry already thanked, but because, first of all, I don't want to be like the actress who accepted the award for $1 Million Baby and forgot to thank her spouse. They divorced 3 years later. So I'm really hoping that I get everybody right. Of course, Jeremy Prince, Elizabeth Cornu, the past archivist Jojo Black, the current archivist Patricia, Sean Green, who has been doing so much in terms of fundraising for us, Lynn Dew, who helped edit these labels. You have no idea how much these labels are work, you know? I mean, they look very simple, don't be fooled. So I'm here mainly to talk about the exhibit, but in order to talk about the exhibit, I have to talk about my arrival in San Francisco, which was 8 days after Orange Tuesday. And for the first time, when I was preparing this exhibit, I heard a recording that was broadcast on Fruit Punch on KPFA of the Orange Tuesday demonstration. It was, oh my God, it was inspiring how people just poured out in the street spontaneously. You'll see. I arrived 8 days later on June 15th, and within less than 2 weeks, I was parading in the Gay Freedom Day parade. It was not called Pride back then. In the first women's contingent, where we seized the front of the march, and the Dykes on Bikes appeared for the first time. Yes. I heard Howard Wallace report on what happened in Miami. He and George Mendenhall went to Miami. George was a BAR reporter. Howard was an itinerant radical. I can't remember what job he was doing at that time, but he was formerly my spouse's roommate.
He was a doorman at the time.
Oh, he was a doorman. Oh, wow. Okay. And he gave a report on what had happened in Miami and why we lost. 2 months later, I helped organize the first demonstration against the Briggs Initiative, which took place on August 20th, 1977. These dates are burned into my brain. I'm never going to forget them. So this exhibit really is my life in San Francisco between June 15th, 1977 and November 7th, 1978. I'm so glad that we have such wonderful archives here in San Francisco from which to pluck these various wonderful pieces of information that will, in a nutshell, give you a slice of history, a representation, t-shirts, leaflets, buttons, videos, audios, signs that would go up in the bars. You know, basically this was a campaign, a community campaign in every possible way. The bars boycotted Florida orange juice in reaction to Anita Bryant's participation in the preceding campaign in Miami, Florida, that rescinded a gay, lesbian, anti-discrimination law. And then she and John Briggs said, California's next. So this is that stuff. And it goes up to the final demonstration that the COBby organized on November 4th, 1978 at Civic Center, and there's a video of it as well as this leaflet, to the fact that people did not know the night before whether we would win or not. There were plans for what happened if we lost. And I found several documents that said, well, if we lose, we're going to gather in the streets. If we win, we're going to gather in the streets. You know, fine, you know. But there were plans just in case we lost and what we were going to do for the next 6 months. So I really invite you to spend time with this exhibit. I'm going to let Paula Lichtenberg.
Well, mention John and his contribution.
well, this is my spouse, John, and we've already had a gay divorce, so we can't get divorced again. LeGay did gay divorces in the 1990s.
That's before we were married.
That's before we were married, yes. And we didn't get married until after same-sex marriage, so we were out. This is my partner's mother. This is John's mother in the 77 parade. So, 78 parade. Other than that, John has given me lots of moral support for the last 4 months. Paula Lichtenberg is now going to talk about the context of this exhibit. It is just as important as the exhibit itself. Paula Lichtenberg, co-chair of the Bay Area Coalition against the Briggs Initiative.
Hi, and I'd like to thank my wife, who I met when we were both on the board of the Historical Society, so I always recommend getting active in the Historical Society. You never know. If you don't want to go to the bars, go to the board. Glenn and Sue and John and I were, a few years ago, we're looking at what the coverage of the Briggs Initiative, the history as it was being recorded, and we noticed that the groups, the grassroots groups, were largely ignored, and when they were written about, it really wasn't telling, in our opinion, an accurate story. So we've been gathering information. One of the things we plan to do, now that this is over, and until you've done one of these exhibits, you have no idea how much work it is. And Sue was responsible for this, not me. We have a web page at San Francisco State where we plan on gathering information, oral histories, documents. I mean, they won't be at State, but they'll say, oh, the Historical Society has these pamphlets, and this library has this document, and we hope to people that were involved with the No on 6 campaign. I should ask how many people were involved, worked on the No on 6, and what groups were you with? No.
Independent actors.
Independent actors.
I was actually smallishly paid on the No on 6 campaign to do voter registration for the 4 months leading up.
Great.
I did voter registration too, but I also worked in Teamster Local 278 and we convinced the union to.
Great.
Yeah.
And that's really the point that we're trying to make, that there wasn't this one organization. There were dozens of organizations, mostly grassroots, because we saw what had happened in Miami, and it's the same thing that happened with Proposition H, a lesson not learned, that rather than showing individually how the proposition would affect individuals and harm individuals, in Miami it was this, it's a it's against the Constitution. It's not right. You should vote. I guess it was, I don't know, it was nowhere yes in Miami, but people like Howard and George and I guess Harvey, people that went there saw how they lost in Miami, and it was really important that grassroots groups like Maccabi, Scrap Six, which I think is the best name, Sonoma County residents against CropSec, San Franciscans against SIX, also the Concerned Voters of California, which was a more mainstream. There were all sorts of groups all up and down the state. So that's really what we're trying to do, starting this exhibit on the webpage that we're going to get going at San Francisco State. We just wanted to record all the stories. And I hope that we can work with the Historical Society to get some oral histories. That's what we'd like to do in the long term, but we just wanted to show that, I mean, there's so much we could have put in here. There's just not room. So hopefully, down the line, when you put something up on the in various sites, and maybe you can give us your papers, your remembrances, and that kind of stuff. And I would like to say about Elizabeth, I always remember she's the one that showed me how to use a glue gun, and I'll be forever grateful.
Thank you, Paula. I just want to say one more thing. I think one of our bartenders is standing in front of me, and I noticed his "Fuck Trump" button. Oh. 40 years ago, he would have been wearing a flannel shirt. He would have had a military haircut. He would be wearing blue jeans and butchy boots, and his button would have said "Fuck Briggs." Yeah. So this is history, right? So we're all so glad you're here. I'm sorry Glenn couldn't join us, because really, in some ways, she pulled all of us together to want to do something about this moment in history. So thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for celebrating our victory against Briggs. Yeah!
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. How many people are members of the GLBT Historical Society? Yay! Thank you all, and the rest of you who's going to join when you go home tonight. Can I get just one person? One person. Yay! Thank you.